Hello, and welcome to the Say Yes to Holiness podcast. I'm Christina Semmens, your host, and today I have a marvelous guest with me, especially for all of you moms out there who are listening to this podcast. I know that Maria is going to be a great resource for you, and I'm sure that she will be an inspiration and help you on your own journey. But Maria Riley, you're an author, and I came across you through a whole different topic that we won't dive into today, but we might touch on a little bit. And it drew my attention to you. And then I discovered your Adventures with the Saints series. And I'm like, I got to have her on the show. So thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure, Christina. Thank you for having me.
It's such a joy to have a fellow author, especially a fellow Catholic author on the show. So, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience and kind of, a little bit about your writing and how you came to be doing what you are doing today?
Absolutely. So I'm Maria Riley. My primary job vocation is with my family. I have four amazing daughters who are less than 4 years apart. I have twins in the middle. So they keep me super, super busy. And as an adult, that was kind of how I spent most of my days. And then when my youngest was going off to kindergarten, I started having that, conversation most of us moms do, like, well, what do I do with the time when the kids are at school? I knew I didn't want to work full time because I wanted to be home when they were home from school, but was thinking about part-time work or getting involved more with my parish. I have always, since I was really young, my life dream has been to write a book. And so I decided and, prayed and discerned and realized it was time to start writing. But I had no intention of writing either Catholic books or children's books. I was sitting and drafting my first full-length secular novel, which is still sitting on my computer, and I hope one day I get to do something with it, but it wasn't that time. And during that time when I was writing almost every day and really just having time to sit and think, like it was a new season as a mom, and it was really beautiful. I was completely inspired. I was struck one day as I was reading the Magic Treehouse series with my children.
Mhm.
We all love the Magic Treehouse, and I thought this is so cool because my kids are learning, but they don't know that they're learning because they're reading this story. It's not, boring nonfiction history book. It's an adventure, and the kids are traveling, time traveling, and being immersed into it. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be so cool if we had like a Catholic one of these? And the Holy Spirit told me, yes, and you're going to be the one to write them. And
Mhm.
so that was how Adventures with the Saints was born. And so I had the inspiration for the first one and sat down and started writing it almost immediately. It was so fun to write, and it just completely flowed out of me. And it was very well received. And then the series was born. It was really exciting.
Well, that first book, I believe, was Saint Joseph. And so actually, I just recently made my consecration to Saint Joseph. Even
Beautiful.
with the year of Saint Joseph, I missed the boat. I read about him and, but it was just like, I just missed the boat. And so it was absolutely fascinating to see that your first was about Saint Joseph. Was it that you said it just flowed right out of you? So how was it that Saint Joseph became that first book?
So the first book especially is a very, very special story. So part of my story is my husband and I were foster and adoptive parents. And so my three youngest daughters, so both my twins and then my youngest child, were adopted through foster care. And of course, as we were going through foster care and, unsure of the future of our girls and all of those things, we really leaned very heavily on St. Joseph as the foster father of Jesus. He had been there, had lived that role. And so he was, of course, our patron through that. And so the family that I created for this book is a Catholic family that was adopting a foster child. And this foster child isn't sure if he can be loved as much as the biological children in the family. Because in my family, we do have a biological daughter and adoptive daughters. So we have both in our family. And so then the children get to time travel and meet St. Joseph, and then St. Joseph gets to teach them about how much he loves Jesus, even though he's not Jesus's biological father, and how our true identity is as children of God. And we're all adopted children of God. And so through that, he is able to teach about the true meaning and our truest identity.
Beautiful. Absolutely love it. So nothing that happens in our lives goes without having a purpose and God's bigger plan. And absolutely beautiful to hear how that is the case, especially for you. So you have three more books, Saint Therese, Saint John Bosco, and Saint Joan of Arc. So what led you to choose each of those saints in your series?
Sure. So Saint Therese is one who she was one of the first saints that I ever experienced who really hunted me down. And I know she does this with a lot of people, it's very cool, but she just kind of kept popping up and popping up and popping up. And finally I read her whole autobiography, Story of a Soul, and it was extremely transformative to me. And what I love about her is just her profound simplicity. And I think so much in life we really overcomplicate things. And so I just love her concept of just like, it doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be massive. Like if you are a little person, just do a little thing, but just do it with tremendous love. And that is how you can become a saint. And reading her autobiography is what started to awaken in me the truth that I was created to be a saint, and that it was not only something that I could do, it's something that I would do, as long as I could follow her little way. And so as soon as I had learned about her, I knew I wanted to share that message with children, because especially for young people who go through life so much being told, like, when you're older, you'll grow up. Not yet, not yet. You're too little, you're too young. And St. Therese says, no way, no way. No matter who you are, no matter how old you are, no matter what your circumstances are, you can still become a saint with the love in your heart. And so I wanted to share that story with the world. And then St. John Bosco, I discovered him actually through our parish family faith formation program, always had a saint of the month. And so I did not know him very well until I learned about him while I was doing family faith formation with my kids. And he is the patron saint of all school children. And he also was just tremendously talented. He could juggle and do acrobats and flips and magic tricks. And he's like one of the coolest saints. And I feel like for kids, like it's
Mhm.
just so fun. I grew up Catholic, and I always thought that to be a saint, you either had to be a priest or nun or be martyred. Like I didn't
Mhm.
know that you could really have like a fun life and do things. Like you had to be
Yeah.
like boring and, cloistered behind. I was like, I never
Mhm.
wanted to be a nun because all I ever wanted was to be a mom. And I definitely didn't want to be, burned at the stake. And so I just thought like sainthood wasn't for me. And so part of what I'm trying to do with my series, my hope is to introduce kids to some of these saints who are
Mhm.
so fun and lived really, really vibrant, exciting lives. And were not necessarily what you think of. Like John Bosco was a priest, but he used to play sports with the kids and roll
Mhm.
around and get dirty and, do all sorts of fun stuff. And so I wanted to bring the kids to get to know him too.
So isn't it interesting that the next saint in your book does get burned at the stake?
Her story is really funny. So it is Joan of Arc. When I started my series, one of my commitments was I was not going to choose a martyr because of this fear that I had growing up. I wanted to change it.
Right?
And so I had decided that I was going to do men and women. So I wanted to it's not necessarily going to be every other for the whole series, but
Hmm.
I really wanted, especially in the beginning, to be representing both male and female saints. And so I knew I wanted to do another female saint. And so I started praying about it. And my husband had suggested Joan of Arc. And I was like, no, she was a martyr. Like, she's not the one.
Hmm.
And then I'm researching somebody else. I'm like, no. And then I'd ask somebody else and they'd be like, what about Joan of Arc? And I was like, no, no, I'm not doing Joan of Arc. So she kept popping up. And then finally, my grandmother called me and she said, Maria, I have this statue that I want you to have. And so I go over to her house and I pick it up. And she tells me, she says, it's not Mary. I have had this for probably like 30 or 40
Hmm.
years. And I don't know who it is, but she's beautiful. And I've always loved her. And it's just this girl with a basket of flowers. And I'm like, okay, thank you. So I bring her home and I do a Google image search and discover it's peasant Joan of Arc. And she's
Hmm.
there barefoot with her, simple dress and has her little basket of flowers. And so she's in my office with me. So she hangs out with me all the time now. And I was like, okay, Joan of Arc, I hear you.
Hmm.
So that's how I decided to do Joan of Arc. And so now I do have a martyr. But my series, the children, most of the book is actually just in present day with the Martin family kind of living ordinary family life, ordinary Catholic family life. And there's
Hmm.
only a couple of chapters with the saints, and it's not a whole biography of the
Right.
saint. So we don't read about and learn about the
Hmm.
martyrdom during the book.
Right. Yeah. So what is the big takeaway that you wanted children to get from Saint Joan of Arc?
So Saint Joan of Arc's is how to stand up to bullies and to
Mm.
defend righteousness. So it's pretty cool. But once I choose my saint for the next book, I spend a lot of time, several months, researching them, and I find, movies and biographies, and I spend a lot of time in prayer with them. And I ask them what the lesson is that they want me to share with the children, and then I build my story around that lesson. And it's challenging because a lot of them have so many great things, like so many great things that we could take away. And so
Hmm.
with this level of a book, it's like I'm really having to simplify it and choose just one thing. And so with Saint Joan of Arc, she kind of kept telling me over and over that there are some fights that God calls us to fight. And I'm like, no,
Hmm.
like these are little kids. Like that's too much. That's too big. And she's like, no, this is what they need to hear, that we are never called to start fights, but we are called to defend good and righteousness, and especially those who can't defend themselves. And
Hmm.
so in the book, they have a friend who is picked on by some bullies and his hat is stolen, and they just walk away because they say fighting's bad. But then Joan of Arc helps them understand that if someone is not able to defend themselves, even if it's scary and even if we don't want to, because of course Joan never wanted to fight. She didn't grow up like dreaming of battles. She was very explicitly called into it. And for all of her battles that she went into, she would send letters ahead of time and ask them to surrender so that they could end it peaceably. And they never did. And she never wanted to go into battle, but she didn't shy away when she was called to.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. And I presume you're working on the next one. Can
I
you share who that
I
is?
sure am. Yep. Yeah, yeah. So number 5 is going to be St. Francis of Assisi. And
Ah.
so, yeah, that one's in the works right now, and that has been super fun. Another one that was very, very challenging to simplify down to just one little
Hmm.
thing, but I think it's going to be a great message. So he's really talking about detachment from worldly goods. Another one of those huge topics for little brains, but I think the earlier that we can start talking about these things in our families and that kids can start to understand them, the more natural they'll be as they grow up understanding, these kind of huge Catholic topics.
This keeps coming up as you've been sharing about each of your books, is just kind of this theme of assisting families and being able to learn and to share positive messages. And could you describe a little bit more about your motivation behind it, especially this series?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started writing this series, my real dream, what I knew was that I wanted to write for this age specifically for a couple of reasons. And the first one is that at this age is when kids, so it's a chapter book for kids in like first through third grade. And at this age, once they just start being able to read, they are in love with reading, and kids will just devour books. Like they
Hmm.
start and they're just reading and reading and reading. And just like my kids did with the Magic Treehouse series, they love series where they can pick it up and know who the characters are. And I really want it to be able to feed that age with
Hmm.
good quality books. Because as a mom, I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. Since I started this series, there have been some more series. I've started to see more chapter book series, Catholic chapter book, which is so wonderful. We're getting better children's chapter fiction or
Hmm.
children's fiction out there, Catholic fiction out there. It's
Hmm.
it's really wonderful. But so that's was one part of it. But my real motivation is when kids are reading at this level, especially in like first and second grade, they are sitting with their parents and reading out loud with them, or parents are reading to them. And this is one of those beautiful ways that families can come together. And I know my family did it so much with secular books. And then how much
Hmm.
more beautiful is it that we can do it now with Catholic books too,
Hmm.
where parents then can be seeing on the page, just like kids will be seeing modeled, a really average Catholic family where they have water balloon fights and go to the park and do silly things together, but then they attend mass on Sundays and they pray grace before meals. And at one point in one of the books, one of the children is really stressed out. And so the father sits down and just spontaneously prays with him. And I know like in my Catholic family, we were really great with the rote prayers, but we didn't really practice spontaneous prayer growing up
Hmm.
in the home. And so then like how beautiful it for parents then to be able to see also modeled on the page, like spontaneous prayer can be really simple. It can be something just like, Lord,
Hmm.
send down your spirit. I'm so sorry that my child's hurting right now. Help him to grieve and to feel your love and acceptance. And we pray all
Hmm.
this in the name of your son, Jesus Christ. Amen. And like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, anything. It has to be authentic. And so that's my hope, is that parents and children are experiencing this together.
That is a most marvelous goal to have. And I definitely will be praying that the Holy Spirit continues to inspire you on this path. Because you're right, we need good quality Catholic fiction that's out there. And although we're doing pretty good at it, we definitely need more. One thing that gave me a great deal of hope is I don't know if you've heard of the Lion and Lamb service.
Oh,
Yeah, so they're curating, great books and sending them, and that's exactly what they're trying to do is provide that service so parents don't have to go find them, rather they have them. So, yeah, we're doing better, but we can always get better. I know. What are some of the fruits that you have seen from your writing, not just this series, but you also write articles. That's how I came across you, was different, was in a different place. What are some of the fruits that you're seeing that are coming from your writing in general?
there are so many fruits. I think the most profound one is really just within me. Like one of my favorite things to do, I get to write homeschool and Catholic school curriculum. I write lessons. Sometimes I
Mm,
do lessons on the saints, but then sometimes other like Catholic topics. And whenever I get these opportunities to share these articles, I do this research and I learn these things, and it really is just a continuing of my conversion. Like it's a deepening of my
mm,
faith, which is the best and the ultimate, right? Because all I want is to be a saint. And so anything I can do to keep going in that direction. And then secondly, I see the fruits within my family. I'm like, my kids know that I spend my time living for the glory of God and his kingdom here on earth. And they are very proud of the fact that their mom is an author. They love sharing my books with their friends at school and anybody we meet. It's like, well, my mom's an author. And of course, we've read all of my books together, even though so now my girls have grown and they're not technically chapter book age
mhm,
anymore, but they still enjoy them, of course, because I get to. But and then in the greater community, I have the immense blessing of getting to go and visit elementary schools. I
mm,
talk to kids, and when I do that, I always talk about how every single one of us was born and created to be a saint, but that our path to sainthood is as unique as we are. And
mhm,
so part of the goal of my series is to introduce them to some of the saints, but that they need to know that God has given us each unique passions and interests and talents and experiences, and each of those kind of come together to create this completely unique saint that only we could ever be. And so I get to go and encourage kids to be a saint and to teach them like what they were born for and get them excited about it. And so I have seen some of those fruits and gotten, letters from students and letters from teachers and principals, and even just like the joy on their faces of, the experience of having an author come to their school and sign books for them. And it's extremely rewarding.
I can imagine. I have gone down that path a little bit myself earlier on in my own writing journey, and beautiful the message that you're able to share because it's so needed in our world today. Not just the fact that you have the potential and you've been created to be a unique and unrepeatable saint, but just the fact that you are God's child. You are his son, his daughter. You are precious. And so many kids don't hear that. And so I'm glad that you're able to do so. What, kind of flipping to the other side, what have you found to be probably the most challenging aspect of what it is that you're doing?
So I have experienced a fair amount of spiritual attack on various levels between stressors within the family, struggles while I'm praying, some despondency, and then a lot of despair over the fact that I spend a lot of hours doing this and do not see a lot of financial gains. Like you don't get
Hmm.
into Catholic writing to make money, and
No, you
I
don't.
know that. I didn't start this to make money, but then can still find myself, getting discouraged when it's like at the end of the day, I'm, putting all of this into it and then not seeing my earthly reward, which I don't
Hmm.
want my earthly reward when I'm in a good spiritual place. But again, when I'm still susceptible to all of those
Hmm.
sorts of lies. Yeah. And then, traveling has been an adjustment when I've started traveling a little bit to visit the schools and different things. And there's been some growing pains with my family. My husband is an amazing trooper, but my kids have had me home their entire lives. And so
Hmm.
it's a little bit of a change. And so we're working through some kinks and
Yeah.
figuring that stuff out too.
Yeah, having to share the person that's always been there for
Mhm.
you with other people is, I think, probably one of the most difficult lessons that all of us come to have. And St.
Yeah.
John Bosco's lesson of not being quite attached to things of the world, that includes people too, even those people that God has placed in our lives for our benefit. So I will pray for that because I know that it is a difficulty, but in the end, I do know, kind of looking at I have adult children, and so I can say that in the end, they get it. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
wrestling as you go. So for you, you've had these spiritual attacks and some challenges within family. How is this helping you in a particular way become a saint?
Well, so I think really kind of what I was touching on at the end there, that this reminder, it's like a constant in my face reminder that I am working for my heavenly riches and not for the riches on earth. And so long as I can approach every day and every interaction and everything with that really in my forefront, I believe that I will have no choice but to become a saint. Like if I can always remember what I'm working towards, that helps. So it's, yeah, and it's just, it's such a gift to be able to like go on retreats as part of my work, and to
Mhm.
be spending time in prayer and learning about and researching these saints as part of my work. That I'm able to really, really delve so much deeper into the faith. And every time I think like, oh my gosh, like I've figured it out, then I just, a whole new door is like burst open, and it's like there's so much more to learn, and there's so much more
Mhm.
to experience, and there's so much more to know and to love. And the more I learn about the faith, the more I realize I know nothing about our faith, and what I know, I love, and I can't wait to
Mhm.
just kind of keep discovering.
Awesome. So, what's developed for you to be the one habit or practice that's really been key for you to live out the life that God created you for?
So I was taught about 2 years ago how to do imaginative meditative prayer with the scripture, with the gospel reading. And I spend about 20 minutes a day. I would love to do an hour, but that's
Mhm.
not the reality for my season in life.
Mhm.
But so spending time daily with the gospels and really letting God speak to me every day has been the one practice that it's, first thing in the morning. Actually, for me, it's not so. I'm a busy mom. It's not first thing. I'm not a morning person. I never have
Right.
been. So I get my kids up and on the bus, and then I get my cup of tea, and then I do it when like
Mm,
my morning obligations are done, and then that really helps me center. I know a lot of people advocate for set the alarm 30 minutes earlier and do it first thing. I've tried that, and all it did is make me more tired, and then I'm so worried, is it time? Do I have to get the kids up, and
right.
what else is going on? And so being able to set aside that time every day for prayer has really been it for me.
And that's so important for people to realize that we're all unique and we're all different. And, yeah, the general guidance, is that it's like first thing of your day. But if that's not when you are at your best, I think God would prefer that we're at our best when we come to spend time with him.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm glad that you have found imaginative prayer. Ignatian.
Mhm.
Ignatius was a huge person who advocated this. And actually, I hope Saint Ignatius is going to be one of your saints soon. And he's one of my favorites for sure. What is it? So even though we're talking all within Catholic world and saints and you know have there been particular books or movies or a TV that, in the secular space, or it could be a Catholic one? I mean, The Chosen are Christian. What has been inspiring for you and helping you being able to imagine, because in many ways you're having to imagine a lot of the stories of the saints and your characters in the midst of interaction with them. What's been inspiring you?
Well, so definitely the Magic Treehouse series, I think, is
Hmm.
like my number one inspiration. We have like the whole series, and I've read through all of them multiple times, and that has been so great. And then I also really love Lisa Hendy's The Time Traveler series, which is a Catholic series, and it's very similar to mine, but her books are for a bit older of kids. And then also her stories really kind of go into like the whole life of the saints, as
Hmm.
opposed to just like one little takeaway. But really, and then my husband and I, we're like the biggest fans of Formed, and a lot of
Yeah.
dioceses I know pay for Formed, and so we spend our evenings listening to, like, we watch different shows and things on that. And we watch Brother Francis with the kids, and they're
Hmm.
they're getting more and more like children stuff on there. It's really really cool. But there's just a lot out there, and I'm reading more and more of the saints, and I don't know why, but for most of my life I thought that I wasn't educated enough to read the saints. Like I wasn't theological or like smart
Hmm.
enough. And I said Saint Therese was my first, but then since then I have picked up some where I've tried to read it and then just put it down and been like, okay, yeah, nope, that's above my pay grade.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't have a theology degree, and I don't have any like official training. I just have a love of Christ. And
Hmm.
so, but a lot of the saints wrote very, very simply, and it's
Right.
very, very accessible. And so it's been fun to discover.
Something that I heard, and it's always been in the back of my mind as I do catechetical work and talk with people, especially sharing the charisma, sharing the gospel with others, is just the fact of if you're not able to explain a concept to someone so that a kindergartner can understand, you don't know it well enough. So for me, that's always my challenge of where have I simplified it enough? And then when you're speaking about, and this has been my experience as well, as you're speaking about the saints, and it's like simple. And you're like, duh, this is common sense. How come we made it complicated? And we made it complicated because we didn't know it well enough. Jesus is the premier example of that, didn't he? His
Mhm.
parables were not complex. There were a couple of times the disciples said, hey, could you explain that one to me? But otherwise, for the most part, people understood. So
Yeah,
definitely don't think you need a theology degree to be able to share the good news and share
absolutely.
about all these wonderful men and women throughout time who have followed our Lord and have been inspired to be his holy men and women, his representatives here on earth.
It's funny because I always tell people that when I'm writing these books, it's very challenging. Like you think, oh, it's children's books. Children's books are so easy to write
Yeah.
and the
Hmm.
language is short, but it's like I have to keep, cutting off. I can't have any compound sentences and I have to
Hmm.
simplify the language and I'm really trying to find the right words because I just have a handful of words to say exactly what I need to say. And I was like, I wonder if this is like a little tiny, tiny taste of what it's like for God, who like knows everything and understands everything and then tries to teach us. And he's like, okay, let me like super simplify it for you, Maria. Like here's whatever.
Hmm.
It's like this has got to be like a little tiny bit of what it's like for him because I'm trying to take these, big concepts and make them so that my first graders can read it and get it and fall in love with these saints.
That's a beautiful analogy. I'll definitely take that one and file it away,
Yes.
especially when I'm going, Lord, I don't get it.
Turner, what do you
Yeah,
expect from me?
I'm a 3-year-old. Forget
Yeah.
kindergartner. I'm a 3-year-old. Wonderful. So, kind of a fun question, that I love to ask people is if you could go back in time, and you're doing a time traveling series, but if you could go back in time and just share one piece of advice with your 18-year-old self, what would
Ooh,
it be?
is a good question. I think it would be that God, like in the
Mm,
most profound way, I didn't really experience that until I was in my 30s. I was blessed to grow up in the church, but I was definitely like a box checking. I did what I was supposed to do because I was supposed to do it, and that's what made me a good Catholic. And I had no idea what I was missing until like finally, oh my gosh, it took so long. But I know some people it's even later in life, I'm like in the parable of how long we're working in the field.
mhm,
I'm like the midday person, right? I wasn't there
mhm.
in the morning, but it's not the end of the day yet because I still have time to work in the
That's
vineyard.
great.
Right. And so I would just that like, so I think one of the things that I believed growing up, and I wasn't conscious of it, but it was just like really, it was kind of there subconsciously all the time, which was that God was real. God existed and God did miracles and God cared about people, but he didn't have enough time and energy for me because I wasn't needy
Mm,
enough. And so like part of my story was like we would hear about people who were really suffering and I would learn about these other people and we would pray for them. And it was like, well, but if I want God's help to go to this woman who's really suffering and like, well, me, like, I'm fine. Like, both of my parents are still alive and I've
mhm.
never experienced any trauma and nothing's wrong. Like, I have food on my table and all of these blessings. And I did. I was tremendously blessed. And so, because of that, I felt like God didn't have enough resources to love me intimately too.
Yeah.
And that's what I would want to tell that 18-year-old girl that like you can't put limits on God's love. Like,
Mm.
yes, God does need like this woman who's hurting, she does need our prayers, but he is capable of meeting her needs and still intimately loving you and getting to know you. Like I was putting human limitations, my own idea of human limitations on an infinite God because I just didn't understand.
And what a wonderful way for us to conclude our conversation because that is a message that so many of us have struggled with and need to hear. We
Yeah.
need to keep hearing it. Need to keep hearing. Don't put limits on God. And that's why he told his disciples, didn't he? Hey, if you had the faith of a mustard seed, that mountain would get up and move to the sea. And our faith is so tiny to continuously hear of God's providence, of his care not just for his people, not just for the lady down the street, but
Yeah.
also to remember of his care for me. And he cares for me because he loves me beyond measure. So beautiful. Well, thank
Amen.
you. It has been such a joy to be able to spend this time with you, Maria.
Thank you.
I'm so
Likewise.
glad that I took a chance and reached out, and I was like, what can she say? No, you know?
But you should always ask, right? The worst someone's going to say is no, or they'll just ignore you and you won't hear back. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, no, exactly. So I would be remiss if I did not ask, where can people go to learn more about you and your books?
Thank you. So my website is mariarileyauthor.com. Riley is Riley. And you can get, if you order books from my website, I will be able to autograph them and personalize them. My books can also be found on Amazon. And then if you are interested in hearing from me every week, I put out a weekly video Substack at mariariley.substack.com. And that is just encouragement, particularly for parents and families, but for all Catholics trying to live our holy vocation amid this, crazy secular world we live in.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. And no, I will be praying for you, especially that the Lord continues to inspire you in the messages that you are sharing, not just with kids, but also with parents, with adults, and in the journey it takes to be able to become a saint. We have to be encouraging one another as we go. So.
Thank you.
Amen indeed. So everyone out there, know of my prayers for each and every one of you, that you may be able to do whatever it takes so that together we can tell the master of death, not today. God bless.